Hello guys, it's the 4th of August and welcome to Today in History. Okay, let us roll back the blind, and this is going to usher us into the year 1870. So, not that long ago compared to my other videos, but on this day, the Red Cross, the British Red Cross, was formed or was founded on this day. So 1870, so the British Red Cross is 150 years old today. And it was formed just 7 years after the formation of the international movement in Switzerland. This followed the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War, and that took place between 1870 and 1871. So Switzerland is the home country or the birthplace of the British Red Cross. So it's 157 years old in Switzerland. 157 years old, period. So, I did talk about the Franco-Prussian War, which took place between the years 1870 and 1871, which was the reason for the formation of the British arm of the Red Cross. Okay, and a move across Europe was made to form similar societies. The society was founded as the British National Society for Aid to the Sick and Wounded at War, at a public meeting chaired by Robert Loyd-Lindsay in London on this day in 1870. It assisted in providing aid to both warring armies of the Franco-Prussian War, which I did mention earlier, and subsequent 19th century conflicts under the protection of the Red Cross Emblem. The society was one of several British volunteer medical organizations to serve in the war. So, interestingly, the Swiss flag, you see the Red Cross in the Swiss flag as well. So it kind of makes sense. I just realized that now that the flag of Switzerland has a red cross on a white background. So essentially, it's a flag of Switzerland that the Red Cross use today. And obviously, not to mention the Red Crescent, which is a Muslim arm. I wouldn't say an arm. The Muslims' response, if you like, to the Red Cross. You have the Red Crescent, the crescents. I don't know if it has any color tied to its name. So, 150 years old today, the British Red Cross. In 1905, this article carries on, 35 years after its formation, the society was reconstituted as the British Red Cross Society and was granted its first charter in 1908 by Edward VIII. His consort, Queen Alexandra, became its president. So, let's move on to the year 1914. And for those who know a bit of the history, that was the year that World War I started. Now, this guy who I've featured before, Field Marshal Lord Kitchener, becomes British Minister of War after British declaration of war on Germany. Okay, so this is a very popular poster in the United Kingdom, and the United States have their own version. Uncle Sam wants you, your country needs you. It's a poster of Uncle Sam, who is a metaphor for the United States, I think. Those of you American citizens, you can correct me on this. I don't know if there's a real Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is sort of this mythological figure who personifies the United States. So anyway, like I said, comments in the comment section below. Tell me more about Uncle Sam. But yeah, so this is our own poster in the United Kingdom. Your country needs you, and the person featured here is Field Marshal Lord Kitchener. who, as I mentioned earlier, I featured on one of my previous videos. I will put a link so that you can check that out as well. The link will be at the top right hand corner of this video. So we move on to the year 1918, and so that's the year the war ended, and we have Adolf Hitler, who receives the Iron Cross. I'm sure most of you know what he looks like. You probably do not know what the Iron Cross looks like, so this is what it looks like. He receives this Iron Cross. It's called the First Class for Bravery, and the recommendation, would you believe it, was from a Jewish superior, and his name was Lieutenant Hugo Gottman. So it's interesting that the person who recommended him for this cross, this Iron Cross, First Class Iron Cross for Bravery, was Jewish, and Hitler ends up killing nearly 7 million Jews during the Second World War. You know, it's ironic, isn't it? It's ironic. It's almost like biting the hand that feeds you, as that saying goes. Anyway, so this happened on this day in 1918. Let's move on to the year 1919. Now, this is an interesting one. I'm going to go a bit in depth with this one. The Rodin Museum opens in Paris, in the Hotel Biron, that containing works left to the state by the sculptor Auguste Rodin. His full name was François Auguste René Rodin, and he was born on the 12th of November 1840 and died on the 17th of November 1917. So 17/11/17 he died. He was a French sculptor generally considered the founder of modern sculpture. He was schooled traditionally and took a craftsman-like approach to his work. Rodin possessed a unique ability to model in complex, turbulent, and deeply pocketed surface in clay. He's known for such sculptures as The Thinker, pictured here, The Kiss, The Burghers of Calais, and The Gates of Hell. So you can go check those sculptural pieces on, just type the names on Google, and obviously they're going to pop out and you can read a bit more about it. But what I want to delve into a little bit more is this sculptural piece called the Burghers of Calais. Okay, I'm going to show you a picture in a bit. So this is the sculptural piece called, in French, Les Bourgeois de Calais, which translates to the Burghers of Calais, translates to English, obviously. Now, this is an interesting one because I'm just going to read a bit about this as well. But before I do that, I'm going to summarize, just going to talk about this sculptural piece. So apparently there was a war between England and France, and England's Edward III, obviously he had a battle victory in a town called Crecy, Crecy, or Crecy, and then decided to lay a siege on Calais. His counterpart in France was Philippa VI. Okay, so that's how the story goes. Now, these guys were the bourgeoisie, or the wealthy people of this town of Calais. So on that note, I'm going to go now and read about this so that you get a true picture of what really happened, what led to the commissioning of this sculptural pieces. Okay, so in 1346, England's Edward III, after a victory in the Battle of Crecy, laid siege to Calais, while Philip VI of France ordered the city to hold out at all costs. Philip failed to lift the siege, and starvation eventually forced the city to parley for surrender. The contemporary chronicler Jean Froissart tells a story of what happened next. Edward offered to spare the people of the city if 6 of its leaders would surrender themselves to him, presumably to be executed. Edward demanded that they walk out wearing nooses around their necks and carrying the keys to the city and castle. One of the wealthiest of the town leaders, Eustache de Saint-Pierre, volunteered first, and 5 other burghers, so the burghers are the bourgeois, the wealthy people of the city, joined with him. Saint-Pierre led this envoy of volunteers to the city gates. It was this moment and this poignant mix of defeat, heroic self-sacrifice, and willingness to face imminent death that Rodin captured in his sculpture. Scale somewhat larger than life. So that's the sculpture, again pictured here. According to Froissart's story, the burghers expected to be executed, but their lives were spared by the intervention of England's Queen Philippa of Hainault, who persuaded her husband to exercise mercy by claiming that their deaths would be a bad omen for her unborn child. So her unborn child was Thomas of Windsor, who interestingly lived for only 1 year. So, but other historians consider the episode may have been a piece of prearranged political theatre, which I think it was. This king knew that he wasn't going to execute these guys. He just wanted to sort of shame them, make mockery of them, theatre. It was just a bit of theatrics. That's my own view as well. Anyway, so that's the reason why that interesting sculptural piece was commissioned. And the artist, the sculptor, was Rodin, Auguste Rodin. So go check out his works. He's got the Gates of Hell as well as one of them, which is it's almost like a relief. I think it's a relief work, and it's meant to be massive. And I'm not sure he finished that work. I don't think that was finished. Okay, let's move on to the next one before we stay too long with this. The other things to be said. So 1944, on this day, we go back to this lady, this young lady, Anne Frank. On this day, she was arrested in Amsterdam by German security police, the Grüne Polizei, following a tip-off from an informer who was never identified. Man's humanity to man again. I was a bit emotional the last time I spoke about Anne Frank, because obviously I did mention my daughter. Even if I didn't have a daughter, just thinking about a young girl who has her whole life ahead of her. Look at that wide-eyed innocence, and suddenly that life that she looked forward to, was snatched away from her by the cold hands of death. You just imagine putting a young girl like this through a concentration camp, and the person who informed the authorities, what was the person thinking? It's fascinating. It's fascinating, maybe it's not the right word. Fascinating has too much of a positive spin on it. But it's just sad, for lack of a better term, how people can be so cruel. Especially during the time of war, during times of war. Your erstwhile, average neighbor, your erstwhile, your neighbor who is not violent or who is not aggressive, he doesn't hate you, doesn't like you. War comes along, and all of a sudden, this same neighbor changes. He suddenly despises you because you're from a different race or a different tribe or different color. These things happened, and human beings haven't really changed throughout history. And who knows that these things cannot happen or are not even happening as we speak. I'm getting passionate and emotional about this because we all need to realize that it only takes a little thing happening, so-called little thing happening, for people's switches to flip or to switch, from average, from, nonchalant to aggressive. It can happen within the twinkling of an eye almost. So it's a lesson. I think it's a lesson for us to be vigilant, Love your neighbor as yourself. Even those who you have beef against, there's no point staying angry. It doesn't do you any good anyway. It doesn't do any good to your health. Anyway, medical research bears this out. It bears this out. There's no point holding grudges against people. You can stay away from them if you don't want to interact with them, but why hold a grudge? You're not perfect yourself. You upset people from time to time. So when that happens from other people to you, have it in your heart to forgive, and then move on with your life. Okay, let's move on to the year 1972. On this day, another sad story, Ugandan dictator, who I won't picture here. His name was Idi Amin. On this day, he ordered the expulsion of 50,000 Asians with British passports from Uganda. So most of them inevitably ended up in the United Kingdom. And here, quite a few of them, made a good life, a good living for themselves. I'm going to do my research a bit deeper, but I suspect that one of them, at least one family, became a millionaire and they own a popular brand. If that's true, then I'm going to do a video of that. Perhaps there may be a reason for me to do a video that mentions them in the near future, and then I'll link this video to that as well. Okay, let's move on to the year 1984. So that was really sad for these people, but it turned out hopefully better for most of them. Like their lives were better. They felt safer. Obviously, if Uganda, the president of Uganda, didn't want them, then the United Kingdom welcomed them. Okay, 1984. American athlete Carl Lewis, I did feature him as well in my previous video. So on this day, he wins the 100 meters in 9.9 seconds in Los Angeles. That was the first of 9 Olympic gold medals over 3 games. So that's Carl Lewis for you on this day in 1984. On this day as well, Purple Rain, Purple Rain. So this album by Prince goes to #1 and stays there for 24 weeks. So that happened on this day in 1984. Last but not least is a sad occurrence on this day. Happened a few hours ago in Lebanon. 50 people were killed in a warehouse blast. So, and the death toll is expected to rise. So on that sad note, we end today's Today in History. Join me tomorrow for another Today in History. Please like the video if you do like it, and consider subscribing as well so that you get updates of my video uploads. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate your spending time with us today, and hopefully I will see you tomorrow for Today in History. Stay safe, guys. Bye-bye.